Background, but I also wanted to recognize that we're very pleased to have with us tonight Mary Catherine Bergeneau and our Chancellor Robert Bergeneau. And Yvette Breslauer and our Executive Vice Chancellor George Breslauer. We're very pleased that they're here, and we would like to recognize their very strong support of the DREAM Act. I'm going to briefly introduce Chris Weitz. He has been involved in a number of Hollywood films. Among them, he was the writer and the director of About a Boy with Hugh Grant, for which he was nominated for an Oscar. He directed the second film in the Twilight series and has been involved in quite a few other films. He has a degree to prepare for this. He has a degree, we don't want to embarrass you here, from Cambridge University in English. So, and his work is truly in a whole range of things related to film, to directing, to writing, to producing, quite exceptional. And he will be in conversation with Professor Beatriz Manz, who has studied immigration extensively from Guatemala to the United States, and undocumented immigrants within the United States, and herself is an immigrant from Chile. So I turn it over to you.
Well, is this on? Yeah. When I first saw the film several months ago, I contacted you. I found this email, and I actually didn't expect a response, but I thought, I've never done this before, by the way. I don't go around contacting Hollywood directors all the time. But I was so moved by the film. I thought it was the best film on this subject that I had ever seen.
Thank you.
And surprisingly, to me, you responded to me. So we began a correspondence by email that is culminating with having Chris here with us. And we really deeply appreciate it. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions about the film itself, but I'm interested in your own journey. I understand that initially when you made the film, you didn't really see it as trying to make a political statement. But since then, you have come a long way. The Guardian in England, a few weeks ago, had a headline that read, "Hollywood director steps into row over Alabama's tough immigration law." About a Boy, Chris Weitz creates a series of short videos calling for repeal of crackdown on Hispanic undocumented family. Weitz says that he's happy to lend his directorial skills to the campaign against HB 56. Because, like any American, he's the product of immigration. Quote, "My grandmother is Mexican, my father was a refugee from Nazi Germany, and so I have a connection to this story." I clipped this, so the next quote from you is, "I found, having made a better life, that I couldn't walk away from this. The more I knew about the subject, the harder it was to turn my back on it. I think I am in this for the long haul." Weitz said that he was compiling videos. While he was compiling videos, he was surprised by the virulence of the backers of HB 56. Quote, "I was shocked by the cold-heartedness of people who are avowedly Christian, their unwillingness to turn the other cheek." And it's a very long article describing the 4 videos that he made. So I would like to ask you, What has this meant for you? Why did you make this film initially, and what has this journey been for you? I know that Demián was also quoted as saying that both of you went to Washington, and you met with, you have shown the film there, you met with senators that are involved in or promoting immigration reform, a comprehensive reform, and the DREAM Act, and so on. So you're obviously, this has been a big change in a matter of 1 year for you.
Absolutely. First, I'd like to thank you all for coming, and thank you for the warm welcome. This confirms the suspicion I've had that I really should have gone to Berkeley instead of Cambridge.
We'll wait for your son Sebastián to come here.
No, I mean, there are people practicing breakdancing in the hall outside. There's a taiko drum circle that I was walking in. Wasn't like that in Cambridge, but well, it has been quite a journey because I have to be honest about the reason I first did it. I mean, yes, I do have a Mexican background, but really, I just wanted to get back to the Oscars. So, and I thought, well, this is a fantastic script. I was given this script, and I thought, if I make this movie well, then people are really going to like me. And of course, I sympathized with the characters, but it's a ways from there to digging into the subject of immigration reform. The whole thing was a research project about which I might go into later, depending on the nature of the questions. But eventually, it emerged that we didn't do so great or so well, I should say, in an academic environment. When we first came out on the big screen. But the place where we were just kicking ass and taking names was in Bethesda, Maryland. And I wondered why that was, and it turned out that was a suburb of D.C., and a lot of policymakers, people who worked on the Hill, people who were working for immigration reform, think tank types, were watching it and loving it, and they got in touch with me and said, would you like to come to the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute? We'll do a screening of the movie. And I said, yes. And then I thought I had better read up on this subject or I'm going to sound like a jackass. And so then when you do start reading about it, you realize that there are 11 million undocumented workers in this country from various places, not just Mexico and not just Central and South America. But that's 3.5% of our population. And leaving alone the fact that it would cost $200 billion by current statistics to apprehend and deport these people, it would actually be catastrophic for our economy. And it would tear families apart. It would tear our social fabric apart, in fact. And to me, it would be a gross violation of our standing as a country and a tremendous act of amnesia. So that got me kind of motivated. And then when the Center for American Progress asked me to do some videos, I jumped in, and they can be seen on isthisalabama.org. I think it can be seen on your website.
Yeah. By the way, the 4 short videos that he made, you can find on the website of the Center for Latin American Studies, and I really urge you to look at them. They're incredible.
Thank you. I also had a great partner in Demián, Bichir, who is a very smart guy, lives between Mexico and Los Angeles, and who was willing to go the distance with me even after we hadn't done so well in our initial opening. We felt that we still had things to say. And so we kind of barnstormed and ended up talking to Senator Durbin, who's a big supporter of the DREAM Act, and to Cecilia Munoz in the White House. The politics of immigration reform in the White House right now are complicated, to say the least. But we were able to show this film on quite a high level in Washington, which was fantastic. Senator Menendez, I should mention as well, Bob Menendez. And so I went from vampires to maybe one of the most hated people in Alabama at the moment, I think. I've actually tried not to look at any comment boards on the videos because I think I wouldn't feel very happy. I think I would be by some people. I think by officialdom, I don't think I'd be terribly welcome. They're starting to realize there, by the way, when you look at these very restrictive laws like Alabama HB 56 or Arizona's SB 1070, is it? You see the crops rotting in the fields, families torn apart, tremendous blowback on the part of big business, actually, because politicians who've used this target of undocumented immigrants who can't answer back for their own political gain actually kind of shoot themselves in the foot. And in Arizona, Russell Pierce, who pushed for SB 1070, is out. And I think that we're seeing a laboratory of what would happen nationwide if this were enacted.
Well, why don't we, Brittany, you have the mic. Why don't we take some questions and try to be as brief as possible because I'm sure many of you want to make comments. Because of one?
Because I won't be, no.
Because you won't be. So that many of you can make comments and raise questions. Yes, right here.
Hi. How was it how was it for you switching gears between making a very mainstream movie like New Moon and working with the actors and then switching to this very small political film?
Well, it's going to sound odd, but there wasn't that much of a switch. I mean, the big thing was that I didn't have to worry about whether any of our characters would glitter in the sunlight. And although I'm sure that some, anti-immigrant politicians would love if that could happen. They could just, then you wouldn't have to ask for papers. You'd just wait for the sun to hit the undocumented. But not to be glib, there was a tremendous technological factor in making a lot of mainstream films nowadays. Even this film had 90 special effects, mostly to remove, the safety harness wire when Demián goes up in the tree. I mean, Demián and I have been going around for months saying we both went up in the tree, and we've neglected to mention that we were harnessed in, and there was no danger to us whatsoever. So we acted a bit macho about it. So it was going back to the kind of filmmaking that we're able to do with About a Boy, where it's people talking to one another, and then you know what you have when you get to the editing room. I think that it's the same. I want it to be the same with anything, which is you try to make things as believable as possible. Now, that gets to questions of degree. Obviously, with something like Twilight, you're just hoping not to get laughed out of the room. But in this case, it was really about doing a lot of research. We spoke to young people from East LA, ex-gang members, all the gang members in the movie, by the way, are ex-gang members. Detainee in an ICE center, which we were able to visit under slightly false pretenses, and so that was a big difference, actually, the degree of research that went into it, I think.
All right. Any other? Over there.
Hi, my name is Gladys, and I'm actually an undocumented student here at UC Berkeley. And I know there's a lot of undocumented students here today. And I just want to ask if there was a purpose for the child to be documented and for him not to speak Spanish. Because I think that was really different from what a lot of the students here are used to, especially when we're immigrant families. So that's my question.
Right. Well, first of all, I congratulate you on the courage to state outright that you're undocumented. and I hope that that the DREAM Act will pass in its various forms. Obviously, on the state level, it's in action here, but it needs to be passed on a federal level. And a lot of the Republicans who were supporting it a few years ago have disappeared, including John McCain. I think that in part I wanted to, or the screenwriter and I wanted to portray the various forms of separation that hit even a loving family or a very close family unit. One of those being these families of mixed legal status. That's a very tough thing, especially for, during the Alabama piece, there were many cases of, say, documented kids who didn't want to go to school because they felt that they would be questioned as to the legal status of their parents. Parents who do not want to be separated from their children, parents who are having to leave their children in guardianship in America. So these laws are cutting apart families. And as for the child not speaking Spanish, I think on some level he speaks Spanish to a greater degree than he's willing to admit, but he identifies with a dominant culture. One of the sad things about a lot of life in East LA, especially with hardworking immigrant families, is that the parents are working so hard that they don't have time to do the parenting that's necessary to keep kids on the right path. And all things being equal, the participation of an adult is what keeps kids from heading the way of gangs. And so, the irony is that in trying to make a better life for his son, he's losing him, and it's only this sort of catastrophe that strikes that lets them get to know one another. That was the gist of it.
The story is very much reminiscent of a lot of, I would say, first-generation Raza students here on campus. Mm-hmm. And for one, we're only 8%. So we're obviously not well represented, and we're experiencing a lot of things similar to this. My background is almost mirrored by this story. Mm-hmm. So how do you suggest that we, as students who are in a very much privileged role here at this institution, can do something to help alleviate our communities besides the mere fact that we're here?
It's nothing to sniff at that you're here, and I'm sure that your parents are over the moon, that you're getting the education that my parents worked hard so that I could go to school, and I think that's wonderful. To become aware, and I don't know about whether your status is documented or undocumented, but the vote is important, and getting out the vote, and contacting your local representatives and making your views known. It is surprising how much that's paid attention to. I was helped by a Los Angeles councilman because I wrote an email on their website, which I thought would get lost in this kind of traffic, but it was picked up on, and Councilman Alarcon was the guy who introduced me to Father Gregory Boyle, who was the guy who introduced me to East Los Angeles. So I think that there's a tendency to lose faith in the process, and it's understandable, but organizing and voting and letting the politicians know the cost of not listening is a big thing, I think.
Questions over here? Way back. We're going to get the mic there. Right behind Greg.
Oh, sorry. First of all, I wanted to thank you for for making this film and bringing this story to life, because I've seen very similar films like La Misma Luna, but they aren't to the caliber of what we just saw. Thank you very much, and also thank you to the Chancellor, since he's here, for such support that he's given us to undocumented students. On behalf of a couple of friends here, I and us are undocumented as well. So thanks again. But my question is, what stance do you hope that the film will take politically and in terms of raising awareness of all these different stories that are taking place?
Right.
And what stance is it taking currently, given the current situation where a lot more students are coming out and being more politically active, and a lot more people are speaking out, whether it's negatively or positively towards the issue?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to overestimate what the movie can do, but here our sort of plan of attack has always been, or actually was from a pretty early stage, get Demián nominated, because I knew it was a good enough role and that he was a good enough actor, and I had a feeling that if we pushed hard enough, that could happen, and that would be a pulpit from which to say what we have to say about immigration. I mean, there's very little political content in the film itself, but what it can do, and I urge everyone to, you know, if you like the film, to tell everybody no, to check it out. What it can do is change the minds, and I've seen it happen, of people who are in the middle. I think that there are certain people who will never be, who will select themselves out of the chance to see this. But I also think there's a middle ground that can be fought over. And while the movie can't prescribe any fixes, to me it's very clear that comprehensive immigration reform is the only way that we are going to get ourselves out of this terribly painful situation. It is not about enforcement first. And it's not about small fixes on the state level. So as long as people keep watching this movie, and as long as people pay attention to the fact that Demián was nominated, and as long as I get asked to talk after this movie, I will keep on. I will
come back again.
Yeah.
A bigger room next time.
I will keep on pushing for comprehensive immigration reform anywhere that I can do it, and come the election. I mean, I think a lot of people in the Hispanic community have been very disappointed with the administration's lack of follow-through on some of the promises of 2008. I happen to be one of the perhaps deluded millions who believe that that a second-term Democratic administration will get to work on immigration reform, and that a bill of that nature will be introduced. So that's what I'm hoping for, and that's what I'll push for.
Oh, this is great. Well, we're recording, so you need the mic.
Sorry. Could you talk a little bit about how you as the director worked with Demián, and you know, how much was give and take, how much was in the writing? Could you just talk about the relationship, please?
Yeah. Well, we stuck very close to the script, so there's very little in the nature of improvisation. That's the first thing that should be said. Demián brings extraordinary skills and knowledge to the table. I mean, he had really not been seen in American films other than Che, the Soderbergh movie, or on Weeds on TV. So to me, I had the tremendous advantage of someone seeing this film and this guy for the first time, and maybe thinking, like, who is this guy? He's not an actor I know, or he's not even an actor. And for the most part, you know, I let my actors go because I trust them, and that's why I cast them. I'll occasionally lob in an idea or two when I think that some nuance might be missing or might be helpful. What I like to call the Oscar scene, which is of course when Demián's character explains himself to the son. Demián and I went over that quite a lot. He and I did subsequent or successive rewrites of it, and it was to make it simpler, and in the voice that we had sort of gotten used to in the shooting of the film. But I have to give most of the credit to Demián. I had asked him to, because he's quite thin and kind of and very good looking, he's a very leading man type, I asked him to gain 20 pounds so that he looked a little more like the guys who I see on the corner, who don't have the chance to eat organically, you know. And Demián had just lost 30 pounds from playing Fidel Castro, so I asked him to put the 20 pounds back on again. He says he'll never do this again. But the rest of it, a lot of it was him. When you see the way that he walks, even in that sort of rolling gait that he has, that's not Demián. That's what he brought to Carlos, and even his particular accent. We decided he was going to be from Sinaloa in the north, so there's some joint decisions that we made. But I have to give the honors to Demián.
Although I should say that when he found out about the nomination, the first thing he said was that he credited you completely for the performance he did. That if it hadn't been for the director, Chris Weitz, he wouldn't have been able to do that kind of performance. And he calls you your brother now. Did you know that? Yeah?
I was very touched by that. We went through a lot on this movie, you know. We did a lot of these Q&As. We pushed because we thought it was worth it. We thought that this foolishness of trying to get nominated was worth the bullhorn that it would give us.
It's interesting also what you say about making the script more simple. Mm-hmm. You clearly succeeded in that. And also often what's not being said. Mm-hmm. The moments of silence say so much. I mean, it's extraordinary.
Well, it takes a certain caliber of actor to be able to hold the screen that way, and for us to maintain interest in that person's face. It's not easy, and it's also just not given to certain actors to have that sort of ability. And Demián has that. It's really extraordinary.
It was kind of shocking to see him on Sunday night at the Oscars. Mm-hmm. He looks, so sharp with his tuxedo, and we didn't. You were also there on the red carpet. I didn't see you. You probably were all dressed up too, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I got a ticket, so I'm like, I'm there. Free drinks and hors d'oeuvres.
And talking about Alabama?
Actually, I did. I kept on talking about Alabama to the bemusement and consternation of, outlets like E! Entertainment.
Or Fox News. How about Fox?
Fox strangely didn't have much to ask me about the film.
We'll take one more question on this side, and then there's one over here, and then we'll move over to this side.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
First of all. And I wonder if you can talk about, there were a number of young actors in the movie, like the son, among others. And
what? Excuse me?
A number of young actors in the film, including the son, among others. And I wonder if you can talk about how you cast those roles and working with them, particularly the character of the son.
Right. Well, this was a really terrific mix of everything from an ex-gang member who had never been on film before to really versed actors from Mexico like Demián or Joaquín Cosío or Dolores Heredia. And in the case of all the kids, I saw quite a few people. A lot of young actors come from what I call the puppy mills. Which is Disney, TV, Nickelodeon, and they're all very good looking, and they can sing and dance and smile, and they're all very charming. But in this case, we went with Jose, who had never been in a film before, who took 2.5 hours to get to his auditions because he had to take 3 buses. Grew up in East LA, single, undocumented mother. And the casting of Chelsea Rendon as his knucklehead girlfriend and of Bobby Soto, those were just people who seemed like the kids whom I met when I was talking about the film. And Jose was he's a very kind of brainy kid. He knew kids like Luis in the movie. He had just decided that wasn't the way he wanted it to go down. I think that takes a particular strength in many cases, because kids are often confronted with a school system that doesn't really seem to care about them, parents who aren't around, and a bunch of guys they've known all their lives who are defining themselves, albeit in a kind of a nihilistic way, with their neighborhoods, which is, I kind of think, a way to assert identity, even though those guys know. And there was one point at which Father Boyle and this guy Hector Verdugo, who was kind of the second in command at Homeboy Industries, sort of corrected me about a certain scene in which gang life was portrayed, and we dropped that scene and shot a different one. There's a scene in which Luis's best friend comes over and he's really excited about the prospect of getting jumped into a gang, and Greg Boyle and Hector said, it's not really like that. These kids know it's something that it's going to be impossible. They think impossible for them to return from, and they're probably going to end up dead or in jail. But we had one F word to use before we turned into an R movie, and the moment where we used it was to express what Father Boyle said to me was what kids usually say when they finally decide, I'm going to join a gang. It's fuck it. That's the attitude, not, oh, fantastic, I get all this bling, and, So I'm glad I listened. And in terms of working with kids, which I've done a bunch of times, especially kids who are doing it for the first time, I think the important thing to remember is that you're casting a family, not just a young actor, that you really want it to be the case that you're not going to mess up their lives, because they're going to be in they're going to live and breathe what you're doing for months at a time, and so you want the surroundings to be supportive and gentle. Demián was a great help in spending time with Jose. I'm still in touch with him pretty regularly, and he's actually a perfect candidate for Berkeley one of these days. So yeah, so we're working on his college entry kind of strategy.
I hope you write a letter of recommendation.
Yeah, well, actually, I hope you do. It's different. It's different than with somebody than working with someone. It's different from working with someone like Demián, where you're making just these slight little adjustments. Sometimes you have to just wipe off the chalkboard and start again, and arriving at these little moments can be more difficult. But you've got to make sure that you have the time to do that. Actually, it's a lot about teaching actors that it's about listening as well as talking, which people can forget.
Hello. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about the decision that was made to have it be the mother's figure step away from the family.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, statistics indicate that most single-parent families in East Los Angeles are female run. It's single mothers. But when this question comes up, I say, you know, if it was a mother, like at minute 5, she'd say, "You're acting like an idiot, and I love you more than anything. Stop it." And then it'd be a short film instead of a feature length. That really half of the movie was the father learning to say what he had to say to his son, because early on he doesn't have the equipment to do that. It was the script that I received. To me, it was interesting to see this father reveal kind of a feminine side, or what would typically be called a feminine side, through the course of the film, and doing what, you know, no macho Hispanic male wants to do, which is to break down in tears by the end of it. And I think in terms of presenting counter images of the undocumented immigrant, Carlos kind of serves very well. That being said, the heavy lifting, for the most part, is being done by women in these single-parent families, and I have to acknowledge that.
I just want to also ask you, there is only one very short scene where the woman that owns the house and the garden appears.
Yeah.
And that's a very interesting conversation that they have too. Why is that so? I mean, that was perfect. I'm not saying we wanted to see more of it,
right.
But how was that decision made?
Well, a lot of films like this, there's some white person comes in and kind of worries about things a lot and rectifies the situation, or it's hand in hand, and everybody's happy at the end. But white or Anglos were kind of peripheral to this story in many ways, and you know, I'll tell you something really strange, which somebody sent to me. Is actually one of the guys from Ozo Motley, who did the end credit song. He sent me this Craigslist listing of an entire gardening route, which was for sale. You could just buy it from this guy, and then you would be the guy who showed up. And I'm sure that he would say something like, "This is my cousin, you know, Pablo, and he'll be doing this from now on." Which to me said pretty much any Mexican is the same to a certain sector of the population. It's like if you got a truck and a lawnmower, then you're regarded as just sort of serving this function. So I didn't want to give too much shrift to the white gaze, G-A-Z-E, in this. In this movie, you know, if you define what the camera's doing and what kind of attitude it's representing, it's just sort of very neutral. It doesn't have a particular color, and that's why you don't really see much of her.
Yeah. Question here. And I think we're running out of time. We'll just take one more after this.
Hi. First of all, I very much want to thank you for portraying a mixed status family. I am undocumented. I have 2 legal permanent parents. Mm-hmm. I have 2 U.S. siblings, 2 U.S. citizen siblings, and one of my siblings and I are still undocumented. Mm-hmm. So this very much portrays a mixed status family. And I believe, and I don't know if I'm assuming, but the majority of these people in this crowd today are mostly okay with watching something like this and pretty much say, oh yeah, you know, these things should be changed. But has anybody who doesn't necessarily agree with this subject in general, anybody very right-wing, someone in Arizona or Alabama reached out to you in order to have this conversation happen amongst them?
Well, for the most part, it's a pretty self-selecting crowd who comes to see the film. Which is, and I'd like to show it to more people who have different points of view. We did a screening in McAllen, Texas, that I think played to Republicans as well as Democrats. I showed the movie in Arizona at ASU, and I think there was a guy who did sort of seem to have a differing viewpoint, although I was confused as to his mental state, because he, which is not to say that that all arguments on the other side of the question are nutty, but he said, "Did you think of making a movie about how you could remove the spark plugs from your truck and then it wouldn't get stolen?" And I said, "Well, no, I kind of just make fictional movies. You know, I don't do how-to movies." And then he said, "How can I tell that you're not just in the pay of big business?" Which took me a while to process, but I think what he meant was, and it was a point that I had made, was that actually big business is very much in favor of undocumented immigration because it allows them a tremendous workforce of exploitable people who won't complain about their working conditions. So there's been a bit of pushback. You know, when we started publicizing the movie, we were kind of hoping that this would break out and didn't really want to come out with a heavy political message. In retrospect, I wish we had. I wish that we had made Glenn Beck very angry, because that would be an interesting conversation to have. But sadly, not as many Tea Partiers have seen the film as I would like. There were some virulent things posted on the YouTube page of the trailer, but they're anonymous, and I have no time for that. I have no time for people who kind of leave some dog poop on your door and run. So other than the anonymous posters on YouTube, no, not really.
You also mentioned that. Sorry. You also mentioned that you were over lunch that you were thinking of taking the film to churches, right?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly, I think that if I had it to do all over again, I would have gone to every church in LA, because it's very hard once you personalize the issue, humanize the issue. I mean, to me, it's very surprising that avowedly Christian politicians are fomenting this kind of degradation of the status of fellow human beings. This strikes me as very unchristian, and a shame. And I think that some of our biggest allies would have been the churches.
We'll take one more question, okay?
Hi, I'm part of Rice's research team for immigration in Berkeley High, and we wrote a book about how immigration policies affect youth, and I was personally affected by it because my mom and I was separated for 10 years, and we presented the book. We went to Washington D.C. We presented to like a lot of senators and Congresses, and now we're trying to make a documentary movie. And then I was going to ask you if you have any advices. I don't know.
Wow. Well, you know, my advice is that it's actually easier to make a movie nowadays than it was when I started. There are amazing. I mean, if the advice is like, how do you do it? Just do it, because frankly, more and more people are going to be seeing things on the internet, and the internet is going to become television before you know it. And fewer and fewer people see things on the big screen, and more people are going to see my film, which is made for the big screen, on small screens. There are amazing cameras nowadays. People can make films on their iPhones. My one piece of technical advice is that the easiest thing to go bad is sound, and you need a good sound crew. Other than that, I've always kind of held that a talented amateur or someone who really knows what they want is actually every bit as qualified as a well-paid Hollywood hack at making films. So I think that there are a lot of think tanks and pressure groups in Washington, as you've probably met some of them, who would be very interested in publicizing your story. And we can talk afterwards. I would have some people to refer you to when you go ahead and do it.
Speaking of that, how did you yourself go from studying English at Cambridge University and now being a filmmaker?
Right. Well, I wasn't one of those kids who was running around with a Super 8 camera and making movies left and right. And Cambridge doesn't have a film program. They try to discourage all forms of creativity. I mean, the thinking behind that is if you discourage it, then the people who are really going to do it anyway will do it, which is a rather English attitude towards that kind of thing. I mean, the idea of a creative writing program or a film program in Cambridge is unheard of. So I left with a degree in English, not really knowing what to do with it, and worked for a little bit as a journalist, writing about films. But I got together with my brother, who is a playwright, and we just started writing screenplays. And now we've been working together for more than 20 years. And we took the opportunities that availed themselves and kept pushing, kept on writing and making things. And that's how it happened eventually. Although sometimes I think I'm just somebody who wanted to write books and read books, and movies just sort of happened. I've been really lucky in that regard. But in retrospect, movies can be a very, very powerful medium for. You've got people in the dark with a bunch of strangers in this strange kind of ritual context, and you can really, really move people in the time that they give to you.
Well, the time just flew by. I mean, I really appreciate 2 days ago, you were in a completely different venue in Los Angeles. Here we are in Dwinell Hall, and we're deeply, deeply grateful. Berkeley is the Center for Latin American Studies. We're all very grateful that you came and shared this film with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think that's my first standing ovation. Thank you. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you.